Gravity feels permanent, invisible, unchanging. Right now, it holds the oceans against the surface of Earth. It keeps the atmosphere wrapped around the planet. It holds cities, forests, mountains, and every living thing firmly against the ground. And yet most people almost never think about it, because gravity has always been there. But imagine something impossible. Earth suddenly loses gravity. Not weaker gravity, not reduced gravity. Gravity disappears completely for 5 seconds and then returns. Today we explore what would really happen if Earth suddenly lost gravity for 5 seconds. The very first moment would feel strangely calm. You would suddenly feel weightless. Your feet would stop pressing against the ground. Objects around you would begin floating upward, not because something pushes them up, but because nothing is holding them down anymore. People across the entire planet would begin drifting away from the surface simultaneously. Cars would lift from roads. Furniture would float inside buildings. Water would begin separating from oceans and lakes. And Earth's atmosphere would begin expanding outward into space. Now we need to understand something important. Even though gravity disappears, Earth itself continues rotating. And this creates an even bigger problem. At the equator, Earth's surface already moves at more than 1,600 kilometers per hour. Normally, gravity keeps everything attached to the rotating planet. But once gravity disappears, objects continue moving through space independently. People would not simply float upward. They would continue moving sideways along Earth's original rotational direction while drifting away from the surface. Now imagine the oceans. The oceans are held to Earth by gravity. Without it, water begins lifting away from the planet. Not instantly, but fast enough to become terrifying within seconds. Enormous masses of water rise upward. The surface of the oceans becomes unstable. Water forms gigantic floating structures above the exposed seafloor. Coastlines vanish beneath chaotic moving walls of water suspended in motion. Now consider the atmosphere. Earth's atmosphere exists only because gravity holds it here. The instant gravity disappears, the atmosphere begins expanding outward. Air pressure at the surface starts dropping immediately. Breathing becomes difficult. Not because oxygen vanishes instantly, but because the air itself begins spreading into space. Fortunately, 5 seconds is too short for Earth to completely lose its atmosphere. But conditions become extremely dangerous almost immediately. Now imagine airplanes. Aircraft depend on gravity and airflow for stable flight. Without gravity, the physics of flight changes completely. Planes continue moving through the atmosphere by inertia. Some begin climbing unpredictably. Others tilt violently as aerodynamic forces behave in unfamiliar ways. Pilots would suddenly face conditions no human has ever trained for. Now think about satellites. Satellites orbit Earth because gravity constantly pulls them inward, while their forward motion carries them around the planet. Without gravity, satellites stop orbiting. Instead, they continue moving through space in straight lines. For 5 seconds, Earth effectively loses its entire orbital system. When gravity returns, some satellites would regain unstable orbits. Others could drift permanently into different trajectories. Now imagine the moon. The moon orbits Earth because of gravity. The instant gravity disappears, the moon stops orbiting. It continues moving forward through space independently. After 5 seconds, Earth's gravity returns and begins pulling on the moon again. Fortunately, the moon is far enough away that its orbit would only change slightly. But astronomers would detect the difference immediately. Now imagine standing inside a city during this event. Windows shatter as objects collide inside buildings. Power lines twist. Vehicles float above streets. People grab onto anything attached to the ground. And above them, the sky itself begins changing. Clouds spread apart unnaturally. The atmosphere expands upward. The world starts looking less like Earth and more like open space. Now consider oceans again. Without gravity, waves no longer behave normally. Currents lose structure. Rivers stop flowing downward. Water begins separating into enormous floating masses. Some regions would experience walls of water lifting hundreds of meters above the surface. And then comes the most dangerous moment of all. Gravity returns. Every object drifting upward suddenly begins falling back toward Earth at the same time. People, vehicles, buildings weakened by collisions, floating water masses, even parts of the atmosphere itself. The return of gravity creates a second global catastrophe. Objects crash back onto the surface. Gigantic waves slam into coastlines. Violent winds form as the atmosphere collapses back toward the planet. The entire world experiences simultaneous impacts across nearly every environment. Now imagine the sound. During the weightless phase, chaos fills the planet. Metal collides. Glass breaks. Structures tear apart. And then gravity returns with explosive force. The sound of billions of objects crashing downward echoes across the world. Yet, despite all of this, Earth itself survives. The planet remains intact. Its orbit around the sun remains stable. Its atmosphere mostly survives. The oceans eventually settle again. And life continues. But humanity would never forget those 5 seconds. Because for a brief moment, one of the most fundamental forces in the universe disappeared completely. And the event would reveal something extraordinary. Gravity silently shapes every part of our world, every second of every day. It holds the atmosphere in place, controls the oceans, guides the moon, shapes planets and stars, and keeps life connected to the surface of Earth. Right now, gravity continues pulling everything gently toward the center of our planet. Invisible, constant, quietly holding the world together.